Hi everyone, and welcome to the Trada webinar featuring Google Quality Score for 2013. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to go over a couple details of the call and then we will get started. So first of all, this is being recorded and we will absolutely send you a follow-up email later today with a link to the recording, the slides which you can download, and we'll be sending you a white paper on quality score as well. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers now. First of all, it is our pleasure to be joined today by Samir Jambeja from Google. Samir, thank you so much for being with us today.
And thank you, Anna, for hosting us. Glad to be here.
So everyone, please feel free to type as many questions as you possibly can into the chat box today. Samir is here to answer your questions. He is coming straight from Google Adwords today to answer your questions, so please send him over some really tough ones.
Samir is dialing in from an underground quality score bunker somewhere deep below Mountain View.
So obviously that is Matt Hessler. Matt Hessler is our Director of Account Management here at Trada. He's been doing PPC and SEO for 13 years, so it will be interesting to see the sort of quality score genius face-off today between himself and Samir.
It's true. I miss the days before quality score when everything was just a little bit easier.
And I'm Anna Sawyer. I also work at Trada. Everyone, if you learned some interesting facts today about quality score and what we should really be considering going into 2013, please go ahead and tweet out what you learned using the hashtag QualityScore2013. Every time we have a webinar, we choose someone who tweets using the hashtag and send them a $25 Amazon.com gift card. So just to wrap up, please enter your questions into the chat box. Please tweet what you learn on Twitter, and let's kick this off. So a lot of the topics that we are going to talk about in today's webinar come from your questions, questions that were asked of our team, questions that were asked of Samir's team over at Google AdWords. But I would really like to have this be a very public forum, so please continue to type them in. So let's do a little sort of brief nuts and bolts about quality score. Hessler, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how fundamentally high quality score equals better performance.
Sure, and we see this. We've got a benefit here at Trada of working with hundreds of different campaigns, and it's really interesting, as an early indicator of PPC success is just that out of the gates quality score. Obviously, you can get yourself into a very virtuous cycle or a very kind of dismal cycle depending on how the campaign launches and what those initial quality scores are. So what we see for new campaigns that come out with highly relevant content priced appropriately so they're getting good ad position and good click-through rate is they garner those good quality scores right off the bat. Sometimes you can then reduce your cost per click over time and continue to keep those high quality scores and have a great and cost-effective campaign versus campaigns that start a little bit rocky, whether that's landing pages that aren't as relevant or as well built with an eye towards quality score, things that are priced inappropriately. They start with really low position and low quality score. That can be tough to dig out from. It's really interesting. Then you garner those low quality scores. Google starts asking you to pay a little bit more to meet their first page bid estimate minimums or to garner certain positions. So quality score is a great early indicator to overall campaign success and has become a huge factor in a good PPC campaign versus just a mediocre one.
So put sort of succinctly, Google considers a few different factors when determining your ad position and your ad price. One of these factors is quality score. And quality score itself is made up of a lot of sort of mysterious seeming factors. A lot of times it is referred to as a sort of secret recipe. But there are some quality score factors that are actually published. And those, in order of potential importance, are click-through rate, relevance, the relevance between ad creative and keyword, the historical click-through rate of your display URL, and landing page quality. Now, Samir, I would love to hear from you if you can comment at all on some of the other factors that some people think might be a part of quality score. I know that sometimes you're testing things potentially.
And I would say they're either other factors or sometimes I think they're sub-factors of these kind of high-level things.
Yeah, Samir, is there any way you can comment on that?
Sure. And Matt, that's a great way to put it, that there are sub-factors of these main categories. So a great example of that is with the release of mobile optimized sites. That is now a factor within calculating the quality score, but it's also tied into the relevancy and the CTR. So if your company has a mobile optimized site, it's a much better experience for the end user. So typically you'll see a higher relevance factor, a higher CTR, because you do have the faster load times, you have more people clicking on it. So that inherently pushes up your quality score as a kind of sub-factor of these 5 key areas.
Great. Thanks so much, Samir. So we're going to go just a little bit deeper on some of these factors. Relevance factors, under these come account history, the click-through rate of all the ads and keywords in your account. It really boils down to a lot of different sort of subcategories under here. But one thing to remember when considering quality score is that the entire point of quality score is to make the end user's experience more relevant and to give a better experience to the end user. And so if you sort of think of this holistically from a high level, you should be in pretty good shape on your quality score. But we are going to go a lot deeper on some of these. So in addition to relevance factors, we also have landing page factors. I think one really common question about landing pages is that you don't get points or you don't boost your quality score by having a great landing page. Google doesn't care at all about the aesthetics of your landing page. They only care if you have a bad landing page. So the landing page policing done by Google Adwords is meant to police serious offenders. So it's actually the only factor of your landing page that can impact your quality score is the load time. So if you have things like pop-ups, if you have things like extremely low load times, these are the landing page factors that can negatively affect your quality score.
Well, and there is also something to do with landing page content, right? So this is a bit of relevancy versus landing page. I don't know which bucket you choose to put it in, but a lot of us as marketers, obsessed with high conversion rates, we tend to build really streamlined, very light landing pages depending on the types of campaigns we're running, right? So if all we're trying to do is collect some basic information in a lead generation capacity, I might have a few quick value propositions and a short form. Problem is, there's not a lot of content on there for Google to kind of interpret when assigning some relevancy to that landing page. So I find that that's a conflict we come across a lot, is how do I have a very simple, straightforward landing page that's a great conversion rate page versus something that's going to do that and satisfy my quality score requirements.
So I'm going to go ahead and move along quickly through this sort of informational quality score part so we can get to the questions. I put a couple notes about match type, which I think can cause a lot of confusion. The first is that match type does not affect quality score or first page bid. And the second is that match type does affect ranking and actual cost per click. So let's take a step back and talk a little bit about match type. So it's my understanding, Samir, that quality score is always calculated on the exact match version of a keyword. Is that correct, Samir?
Yes, that is correct. So it's on the exact match version, while the phrase and broad match keywords will have the same quality scores. So depending on whatever the exact match for that is.
So there's actually no benefit from a quality score perspective to having a lot of different types of match types in a given campaign. However, from a campaign architecture perspective, using different match types could give you an advantage.
Well, and Samir, let's sidebar this a little bit. Maybe this is good for our question section, but one of the things that I see with this is, well, they should have the same quality score. What you do see a lot of times is a much different click-through rate between an exact match and a broad match. So, to say that they would garner the same quality score when the click-through rate can vary highly between the two match types, how do you square those two different perspectives?
Sure, and that's a great point. So for match types for phase and broads, it's meant more to target your audience and not necessarily to improve or change your quality score. Naturally, if you're targeting different audiences, you're going to have either more or less impressions and different click-through rate. But as a whole, that phrase match keyword, in terms of its quality score, it would be equal to the exact match of that same keyword. So the quality score wouldn't necessarily change, but because it's a different audience targeting, you're going to have different impressions and different click-through rates.
Sure.
That makes sense.
That does make sense. Advertisers, especially mid-market and smaller advertisers, struggle a lot with why their quality scores are failing. So again, before we jump into the questions, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can repair your quality score. And if your quality scores are not doing well, there are a few things that are smart to focus on. I would say one of the #1 things that you can do is focus on your click-through rate, which may mean testing new ad copy and trying to get your click-through rate up, which can be a tricky business if what you're focusing on is conversions, because finding that happy medium between getting a high click-through rate and also having a high conversion rate can be a little tricky. But Matt, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about ways that you can restructure your ad groups, ways that you can delete bad keywords, some sort of first steps for fixing quality score.
Yeah, I'll give my basic starting points there, and Samir, I'm happy to get your perspective as well. But some of the things that Anna has listed on the slide here in terms of deleting bad keywords. Now, bad can mean a couple things. Typically, it means your low click-through rate keywords. I'm a big fan of ad group restructuring, really tight ad groups to increase that relevancy. So, taking your big ad groups and breaking them down into, ad groups with 7 to 10 keywords, highly relevant ad, highly relevant landing page from there. And when I do those breakdowns of ad groups, I tend to do a pretty systematic repricing, and when I put those into a new ad group, if I think they're important terms for my campaign, I bid them really aggressively in their new ad group to try to garner a little better position being a big driver of click-through rate. So for me, that's a great way to kind of get out of a low-quality score hole, is breaking big ad groups into several small ad groups that are highly relevant and aggressively priced, garner that higher click-through rate and better quality score, and then start to work those prices back down to where they're going to give you your appropriate ROI for the campaign.
Samir, would you say that you agree with that? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just to add, one of the reasons we do recommend increased bid at the beginning is to build your quality score, you need account history, and there is kind of a minimum level of impressions and clicks that we look for, and it does vary, so we can't give an exact number. But the best way to build account history at the beginning is to increase your bid, get those impressions out there, get those clicks to build the account history.
Gotcha. Cool.
So everyone, if you have more questions about fixing your quality score, ways that you can repair things, please continue to type them into the chat box. We're getting a volume of great questions, which we will get to at the end of the presentation. So let's move in now to some of the questions that were sent in before we had this webinar. And again, some of these questions come from our team here at Trada. We work with hundreds of advertisers and work with a lot of prospects as well who often have questions about quality score. And then also from Samir's team at Google Adwords, Samir actually reached out to his team to try and determine what were the most frequent questions being asked about quality score in a contemporary sense. So as we move into 2013, as we're looking ahead, what are some of the more sort of sophisticated questions that perhaps haven't been answered in the past because the landscape of the web is changing so quickly? So let's kick this one off, and I'd like to send this one over to Samir. How will mobile optimized sites affect quality score, and how should I structure my mobile campaigns? Samir, would you please take this one?
Sure. And this is definitely a question we get asked a lot. With the inherent nature of mobile just exploding in the past couple of years, it is very important for every company to have a mobile strategy. So you do want to look at a mobile optimized site. And like I mentioned earlier in the call, you want to look at what's best for the end user. So when you think about it, when you're using your smartphone, you don't want to have the same type of site that you would have on your desktop. So by having a mobile optimized site, it'll typically load faster and be a better user experience. So this will make it more relevant and thereby indirectly improve your quality score. One question we do get asked a lot is whether companies should have a separate MDOT site or responsive web design. And responsive web design is essentially one design that fits on your desktop and then naturally changes on your mobile phone or your tablet. And what we recommend is, between the two, as long as you have a mobile strategy, one doesn't have a benefit over the other, but each of them will be recognized as a mobile optimized site in the Google backend, which will therefore make it better for your quality score and the user experience.
Samir, on top of that, in terms of campaign structure, so I tend to agree, and I really like responsive design sites. Just from what I can tell, then you only have, when you're doing site updates, adding new content, adding new products, whatever it is, you add it in one place, and it's scalable to whatever screen size it's going to be, displayed on, which is really nice to not have to update two different types of sites, your mobile and your core site. So, but on top of that, would you suggest for most folks that are getting into mobile search that they set up separate campaigns to address a web audience versus a mobile audience from a quality score perspective? Is there any kind of positive or negative for doing that as separate campaigns?
Yeah, there definitely is a benefit of separating out a mobile-only campaign. On the downside, it is a little bit more work because you're creating and managing two separate campaigns. But when you do have a mobile-only campaign, you can put in different calls to action. So things that you wouldn't necessarily use on desktop, such as call now or click to call functionality, something you can do on a mobile only. And then you also want another benefit is you can set different bids with your mobile only campaign. So it's a little bit easier to track. You can optimize a little bit better when you have two separate campaigns. Although it is a little bit more work because of you're managing two accounts.
Sure.
I remember from our conversations earlier, Samir, that we were talking about how across the board we see intelligent advertisers and agencies keeping their mobile campaigns and their desktop campaigns in the same account in the same campaign, and it seems like it's just a sort of categorical best practice to separate them, even though it is a little more work. Would you say that it is generally really a best practice to separate them?
Yes, it definitely is. Across the board, we've seen an average of 12% increase in click-through rate just by separating out a mobile-only campaign. So this is compared to the hybrid approach where you're just opted into mobile, so the same ad copy is shown both desktop and mobile. And that's across the board for all of Google's data.
That is an awesome fact and a great takeaway for everyone listening to that webinar. I mean, I can't tell you what I would do to get a 12% better click-through rate. I've done some evil things to try to get those kind of numbers. So separating your campaigns, that seems like an easy win. And if I were going to tweet something from this webinar to win a $25 gift card, it might be that.
I was just about to say that. I don't know what I would do for a $25 gift card, but I might tweet out that you can get a 12% increase in click-through rate by separating out your mobile and desktop campaigns.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. Again, these are questions that we collected before we held the webinar, but we will be getting to a lot of your questions at the end. Please continue to send them in. In 2013, social efforts affect everything. How can I leverage this to improve quality score? So Samir, I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, definitely seen an increase in social in the past year. One thing that we do recommend are social extensions. Essentially, this is a feature for Google Plus users, where whether it's your ad copy or even during SEO, during your organic search, you'll have a featured either +1 an ad or a URL, and then you can also see who else within your circles has +1 the site, so essentially endorsed it or has liked the site before. And across the board, since we do like numbers here, we've seen generally a 5 to 10% increase in click-through rate when you have social extensions enabled. And when you just think about it naturally, you're more likely to click through to a website when you see that somebody within your circle has endorsed that same company.
I agree. I like the social aspect, and I think it's Google Plus has been interesting. People have tested it out. They're playing around with it. But a lot of people that I speak to as advertisers haven't set up Google Plus accounts for their businesses, and I think it can be a great help to set up a business level Google Plus account and kind of append those to the campaign.
So I'd like to grab a question from the chat. I know I said I would only answer them at the end, but I think this is a good thing to bring up right now. Sherry wants to know, is YouTube part of that? Samir, is YouTube part of this social +1 boost?
So it is not part of the social extensions, but it is a property within the Google ecosystem. So it wouldn't necessarily relate to your social extensions, but if you endorse a video or you share the video, it does get kind of included in the, the total ecosystem.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next question. What role does account history play in quality score calculations? So I'd love to send this one over to Matt first, because I know that he has a lot of experience with this from working with Trada campaigns.
Yes. So we have an interesting policy just fundamental to how we work at Trada, and typically for our advertisers, we will start new campaigns so that we don't inherit some of that account history, and that account history can be really good sometimes, and it can be a bit of a lead weight other times in kind of executing a good campaign. So, positive account history, if you have garnered historically good click-through rates and good quality scores, trying to keep some of that is important. A lot of times you can emulate that campaign structure and ad groups keyword kind of combinations to garner those high quality scores again, but it does take some time. I know Google doesn't publish this very publicly, but to me it seems like it's more a measure of impression count than an actual calendar day kind of history. So if you're running a PPC campaign with fairly high budget or fairly low CPCs where you can garner lots of impressions and lots of clicks per day, your account history maybe isn't as valuable because you can reestablish it very quickly. The reverse, though, is also true if you're running a small campaign and CPCs are $5, $7 a piece, and so you can only get a handful of clicks a day. It can take you quite a bit of time to reestablish that positive account history. So that's kind of my kind of anecdotal bias around account history is look at your data velocity, look at your historic account quality scores, and whenever you're doing any transitioning, those are two factors that I weight pretty heavily into how long is it going to take us to reestablish an account history or quality score.
Samir, would you agree with this?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And we do look at, we do need a statistically significant set of data. So I think, Matt hit it right on the head as well. And I agree with sometimes there are bad habits that start early on. So, sometimes it is a benefit of starting a new, account, new campaign fresh to get away from that bad history.
I mean, that's what I see with, we were just talking about mobile a minute ago. I think a lot of people opted into mobile in 2010, maybe 2011, and there wasn't a big differentiation. But Google's done a lot of things to mature their mobile search offering, and it makes a whole lot more sense to break that out as a new campaign. You're also going to be able to then establish, kind of new quality score around your mobile content. So there's lots of reasons to start new campaigns. I think a little more severe, but for some people, maybe even starting a new account. I don't know.
So let's move on to the next question. Thanks, guys.
So many good questions.
There are. Ads in higher positions have comparatively higher CTRs. Why would the quality score still be average or low? This is a question we get constantly. I'm doing everything right. Why is my quality score low? Samir, would you address this one first, please?
Sure. Yeah, we also get this question quite a bit. And as a high-level best practice, we actually recommend focusing on your key metrics like CTR and conversion. So if you're happy with those success metrics, don't focus so much on the actual number of a quality score. And the reason I say that is, it is easier to get clicks when your ad is showing, in a top 3 position than compared to the side positions of 5 through 11. So sometimes if you have a very high click-through rate, it is because you're in that top position and you're being compared against that same keyword in that top 3 position, which could actually be even higher on a comparison set. So what we recommend doing is, you can segment your stats by the top versus the other, so you can see what your CTR is for 1 through 3 spot compared to 5 through 11. And often you'll find a big discrepancy between the two, and that could be one of the main factors for why you're having a high CTR but a low quality score.
I think that's concisely answered. Now, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, what I start to do if my click-through rate feels like it's acceptable, and I'm getting decent click-through rate but still suffering low quality score, what I've done historically is started to test, in maybe a handful of ad groups, some specific other landing pages. Maybe I'm pushing a lot of my ads towards the home page and it's not very specifically relevant to the types of terms. So try a few deep link ads and see if those ads start to help to push up the click-through rate a little bit. Just a little better landing page, a little more relevancy between keyword, ad, and landing page. I think it's the easier of the two to figure out. So if you've got a strong click-through rate, that's a great basis to start from. Then you can just start doing some intelligent ad testing.
All right. Thanks, friends. We have 3 more questions before we will get to the audience questions. So this is another one I'd like to send over initially to Samir. I know that content is king in 2013. How do I optimize landing pages for quality score, SEO, and conversion? And this is something that we address in a lot of our content and a lot of webinars because we know that it is hard to kind of hit that sweet spot where you have enough content to make your quality score good, but then you also have SEO optimized content, but then your website is also designed for an easy conversion. So Samir, what is your suggestion for kind of being able to meet in this confluence of all these seemingly conflicting factors?
And Samir, I'd like to add a follow-up. How do you feel about Anna asking you a question with an impossible no answer? How do I get my cake and eat it too?
She definitely told me this is going to be some hard questions coming out. So I'll try my best. So sure, with content and landing pages, I think if were you to boil it down, there are obviously a ton of factors that go into this, but the top 3 ones are around the ease of navigation, transparency, and then around content, your relevancy and originality. So again, we always like to bring it back to the end user. So for ease of navigation, you want to think about, is it easy for your visitor to find what they're looking for? Is your load time fast? Is there is contact information readily and available? Is it easy to navigate? In terms of transparency, if you're collecting any information, whether they're filling out a form or a contact info, is it clearly explained, what the information is going to be used for, and so forth. In terms of the content, is it relevant to the keyword search term, to your ads? And then also, is it original content? We don't want to be rewarding, websites that just pull content from other sources or are purely, linking to other pages. So is it, content that is original and that's being updated regularly. Yeah, I'd say those are 3 key areas that you should focus on in terms of optimizing your landing page for not just quality score, but for SEO type work and conversions.
And from a practical standpoint, taking a step back and looking at your overall ROI, you may be willing to sacrifice a couple points of quality score, pay a little more for a click for a super high converting website, or you may determine that you can drive cheaper clicks to a website that has a lower conversion rate, and that's better for your overall ROI. So we really suggest using a robust tracking tool like Google Analytics, or like some of the other, perhaps even more robust paid analytics tools out there, to be able to look at this from a high level and make this decision. I mean, Matt is correct that this is in many ways a sort of impossible answer, and we've had calls before where we've had representatives from landing page companies and representatives from SEO companies, and we often bring this up because this is, as a contemporary digital marketer, one of the trickiest questions out there.
And Samir, I've got a sub question that's very specific. You may or may not have an answer. Does Google publish a minimum standard of the volume of content that they would hope to see on a landing page? I've heard different things. Some SEO practitioners talk about trying to keep a baseline of like 300 words of content on a page, garners a little different impression from Google than something that's really light on actual text-written content where they can establish some text-based relevancy. Do you know of anything like that specifically for quality score?
Sure. So we actually don't have anything that we could share externally on the minimum base. And I do think it does change over time as websites evolve, get more evolved and the content changes. But there's nothing that we could share at this time.
Would it be fair to say that more content is typically better than less? I mean, obviously you want to keep these pages lean and conversion focused and well laid out, but more content and make sure that content is original content, those are both going to generally be pluses for quality score.
Yes, I would say that's fair to say.
Okay.
Ooh. All right, great. Thanks so much, guys. Let's move on to the next question. If landing pages are important to quality score, are simple one-page websites penalized for this? And perhaps as a sort of additional question to this, are landing page platforms that have a simple one-page interface, are those penalized for using quality score? Samir?
Sure. So you wouldn't necessarily be penalized. Again, if you bring it back to the end user, if it's a one-page site and they're just looking for phone number or directions and they find it right away, that's perfectly fine. So you won't be penalized for your quality score, and like we mentioned earlier, your landing page won't boost your quality score either, as long as the load time is correct. One thing I do want to mention on this though is with one-page sites, you can't implement site links. And for those of you that aren't familiar with site links extensions, essentially in an ad you have multiple links within the same ad copy where you can click through to different pages within a site. So that would be one negative of having a simple one-page website. But generally you would not be penalized as long as it's relevant for the end user.
And Samir, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also run the risk on a single-page website of crossing some of Google's bridge page kind of TOS issues, where like if you have a one-page site and any of the links on the site go to a different domain, you're then basically you've created a bridge page situation which Google frowns upon, and your ads will get pulled for review. That's mostly correct, right?
Yeah, so I can't confirm that that's the case for all one-page sites, but you don't want to be seen as a essentially just a link page to other companies or other websites.
Although it's a pretty common practice to use a landing page product like Unbounce or another landing page product, and then just for the ease of building and testing landing pages, and then have maybe a link back to your site or a download that's hosted on your site. I mean, this is actually something we do here on the Trada marketing team, and we don't seem to see quality score suffer.
Well, and the nice thing there is Unbounce will actually put the landing page on a subdomain of your root domain. So it's still technically part of the site.
That is an important point.
That's really important. You don't want a landing page that lives on a totally separate domain. And I will share my knowledge on this, and with the huge asterisk that I haven't seen enough of these to establish a huge opinion, but in a handful of the cases that I've worked with Unbounce and other third-party landing page providers, I would say I've seen a situation where the landing page garners much lower quality score than the main site if the two are not linked. So yes, the landing page exists on the subdomain, but if you have a routing where you don't, like, the logo's not clickable, they can't get back to the home page, it's not part of the sitemap, it's kind of an isolated landing page, it will really be measured only on its own merits. If the landing page is connected to other parts of the site, my anecdotal observation has been that you do garner a little bit of positive if the site as a whole is, well prepped for SEO and has good, basic relevant content. You kind of want to link those landing pages to the rest of the root domain. For continuity's sake, it allows the user to do further research, and Google seems to prefer that from a quality score perspective. Again, my basis is only 4 to 6 of these that I've had to work with in depth, so I will, big caveat that it's not a huge area of expertise for me.
I do want to take a moment to make a clarification here because we were a little unclear. Landing pages do affect quality score in 2 different ways. Landing page design cannot positively affect your landing page, landing page design cannot positively affect your quality score. It can only negatively affect it. If load time is slow or Google suspects that you are doing something weird like phishing, they will negatively affect it. However, landing page content is important to your quality score, and the relevance of the content on the page to your keywords and to your ads in your ad groups is something that can negatively and positively affect it.
Yeah, and we'll try to use that language, one being landing page design, meaning the visual layout and architecture of the page, versus the landing page overall, which would be both the layout and the content. So when we say design, we mean specifically the aesthetic, look and feel, where you put your form, did you put a video on it, that type of thing. Typically will not have a positive effect, but it can be detrimental.
So let's take one last of these questions that came in before the webinar. How do ad extensions affect click-through rate and quality score? So just a quick definition here. Ad extensions are these sort of longer ads that when you're in positions 1 through 3, you have the opportunity to have a few extra things in your ad. It takes up a little bit more real estate on the page, and it's my understanding that these have a pretty good rate of increasing click-through rate. Samir, would you comment on ad extensions?
Sure. And yeah, it is definitely a great way to increase your click-through rate and then thereby increase your quality score just by implementing ad extensions. So I do have some data around each of them. And again, this is this is going to be typical across the board for all advertisers. So on an average basis, but for location extensions, so essentially when you have your map and you could click on it and it gives you more real estate space, we typically see a 7% increase in click-through rate. When you have click to call, so just the phone number, so rather than clicking onto your website, you click to your voice dialer on your smartphone, we see between a 5 to 30% increase in click-through rate, but on average, again, around 7%. For site links, where you have multiple links going to different pages on your website, on average, we've seen a 20% increase in click-through rate. And then the last one for product extensions, and this is definitely something we've seen a lot of traffic on for the holiday season, but essentially during a search you see a picture of a product as opposed to just a link, and we've seen an increase of about 20 to 30% for product extensions.
Great, thanks, Samir. And it's my understanding that Google's official stance on ad extensions is that they don't directly affect quality score, but that they have been known to increase click-through rate, which, as we all know, is an important weighted factor in quality score. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, exactly. So indirectly, affects quality score, but the main driver is through the click-through rate.
Great, thanks. So everyone, we're going to be getting to your questions in just a moment. I would like to take a minute to talk a little bit about how Trada can help you increase quality score and increase your ROI in paid search. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk about this, and then we will get to all of your questions. So please continue to type them in. Please continue to use the hashtag and share information that you've learned from Samir and Matt on today's webinar.
We've had awesome questions so far, so we need to hustle through this and get to all of these great questions.
Yep, we are going to hustle. So Trada is a performance-based solution for paid search. If you are a mid-market or smaller company who is struggling with running paid search in-house or struggling with running it with an agency, Trada can be a great solution for you. A quick high level, the way it works is you join Trada's marketplace and we assign a team of certified and highly specialized paid search experts to work for you. They live probably somewhere else, but you interact with them through our marketplace interface. They do all of the daily work of paid search optimization. They build out your campaign, they add keywords, they do tons of ad testing, and they continually optimize over the lifetime of your campaign. And most importantly, they are paid when they beat your CPA goals. So you work with us to set a CPA goal, and then when these paid search experts, we call them optimizers, beat your campaign goals, they get paid. And so they are directly motivated to work towards your goals. We are the only performance-based paid search marketplace, and we work actually best with mid-sized companies. We don't work with tiny little companies, and we generally don't help out with extremely huge online everything retail stores. We serve the traditionally underserved mid-market customer who has very sophisticated needs but probably has a small marketing team and is struggling with having enough time to do paid search, with getting a good ROI. So if you're interested in learning more about Trada's performance-based paid search marketplace where you pay no additional fees on top of just the work that is done, please go ahead and just type "I'd like a demo" into the chat box, and Alex will make sure that we get that set up for you. So, if you're struggling at all, if you're struggling to understand quality score, if you're struggling to get the best possible ROI, just let us know if you'd like a demo, and we will be happy to set that up. So let's move right on to the questions. And actually on this slide, I do want to mention that we will be sending you out a free white paper later today about PPC quality score myths, and we are going to expose them. And I will jump right into the questions. So we did get a lot of questions today, everyone. If we don't get to your question, please keep the conversation going. Go ahead and email me personally. I will actually have Alex, if you could put my email address into the chat box, but we will get to as many as we can. So I'm going to jump right in here.
Yeah, give us just a moment to get kind of organized. Yep. We've got so many around the page.
Dragging questions all over the board.
We'll try to get these in a good order.
So I'd like to send this one to Samir first. Oak says, my quality score recently dropped to 4s across the board. What would cause a site-wide drop like that? Samir, if you could start with this one, and then maybe we'll hand it over to Matt.
Sure. And we can't necessarily comment on the back end and how it works and determine the quality score, but from my experience when I've seen something like that happens, it's generally just recalibration of the quality score for all the keywords in a particular set. So depending on what the keyword is or what the industry is, it could just be something on our back end, but we can't comment on how that's specifically calculated.
So for me, two things I've seen that have caused this is, major website updates where you've encountered a performance issue. I think we may have even had this on our side at Trada, not through our application, but on our corporate website, where it was like Amazon hosted and there was an outage, and sometimes that stuff can wreak havoc because that means slow page load times, 404 errors, things like that Google will totally readjust the campaign very quickly. The other thing that can happen, especially in the holiday season, is there's just a lot of bid price shifting going on, and where you were garnering good position and getting a decent click-through rate, all of a sudden your competitors have gotten much more aggressive about their bid prices. Your position plummets, your click-through rate goes way down, and all of a sudden you're seeing some kind of, campaign-wide decrease in quality score. I haven't seen it be quite that ubiquitous where everything drops to a uniform quality score of 4. That seems a little peculiar, but I have seen over the holidays people that aren't being attentive to their campaigns, their competitors start moving around bid prices and their quality scores just crash.
Samir, do you have any comment about that?
No, yeah, that's true. Also, as Matt mentioned, it could just be a landing page issue, competitors coming in. So it could be a seasonality thing. Many things that do factor in there.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So I just want to take a moment to establish something. We have had a few questions. Let's take a second and talk about what a good quality score means. What's a bad quality score? What's a middling quality score? And what's a good quality score? I believe Google's sort of official line on this is 7 to 10 is a very good quality score. 4 to 6 is kind of in the middle, and everything below that is something you should probably work on. Would you say that's true, Samir?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. I mean, generally when you see like an 8, 9, or 10, those are typically for your branded keywords, so your company name, trademark, product, and so forth. So if you're getting around a 6 or 7 level, that's typically really good. Anything below a 4, you should work on optimizing it and improving that score.
And we certainly see sometimes in the case of a quality score 3, and almost always in the case of quality scores below 3, 2, and 1, it is leading to requirements for higher bid prices. So if you're finding yourself below 4, this is the point where quality score could actually be costing you money, and Google's asking you to pay more because they've determined this particular keyword ad combination to be of low relevance.
So here's an interesting question from David. I'm going to send this over to Samir. How does quality score work with Chinese and Japanese characters? Further to expand upon this, how does quality score work between UK and US English with Z and S between keywords? Are these considered the same?
It's a really interesting question.
That is an interesting question, and I would like to know the answer. Samir?
That is a great question. Actually, I have not heard of that before. So I know typically because it's based on, your quality score is based on the keyword history and the comparative set. So I would imagine that for Chinese and Japanese characteristics, they would be compared to other Chinese and Japanese words in those characters. In terms of the U.S. versus the UK, again, I think it's based on the comparative set. So look at your geo and your location modifier. But I'm not as familiar with that. So sorry, I can't expertly say one way or the other, but that would be my assumption.
It makes sense, right, when you're dealing with comparative sets. And I've seen just from search surveying, Google is definitely smart enough to recognize UK versus US as synonymous terms. So you can type in one and it will trigger an ad for the other spelling variant of the same term. Google's got a pretty thorough index of that stuff.
David, if you feel like you would like to learn more, please go ahead and reach out, and we will try and get to the bottom of this for you. So next question is from Abby. Why might you see a singular keyword have a different landing page score than the plural version of that same keyword? So is this because quality score is always determined at the exact match level, and so a singular and a plural actually might have different quality scores, Samir?
Yes, that could be one reason, as well as the excuse me, the quality scores are updated dynamically. So depending on when you look at it, it could vary, but I'd say the main cause of that would be the exact match feature.
Okay. Next question is from Stephen, and I'd like to send this one over to Samir initially. How quickly do changes to click-through rate impact quality score?
So like I mentioned, the calculations are dynamic, so they're updated each time a search is made. But it's hard to say how often they're changed based on the number of impressions you do have. But each time a search is made on a keyword, it does update the quality score.
Okay, so it sort of opens up an interesting question here, which is just sort of what is the velocity of changes in quality score overall? And I don't know if this is something that anyone can actually say for certain, because your click-through rate, an improvement in your click-through rate should improve your quality score, but depending on how much account history you have and the amount of impressions that you have in your account history, you may not have enough, or it may happen quickly or not quickly.
That is only half helpful. Quickly or not quickly. I will, again, try to offer some anecdotal info to fill in the gaps here. I've heard the same thing. The party line from Google is reevaluated at every impression, so they are churning a ton of data. My feeling for, I think it was Stephen who asked the question, is if you haven't had 1,000 impressions or more since you've started to experience this increased click-through rate, I would not expect to see a quality score change. So again, it's a little bit about impression volume at a keyword level. So if you're looking at an ad group and you're really trying to police it, think about a real small ad group, 10 keywords or less, where you can keep a decent idea on the pacing of impressions. You've made some significant changes. Maybe you've repriced it. Maybe you've written a new ad. Look to have several thousand, but certainly more than 1,000 impressions before you start to see that shift. That is my, having seen this across tens of thousands of ad groups at this point, and several hundred different customers, anything below 1,000 impressions, I think Google is basically just saying not statistically significant for their algorithms. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So I'm actually going to send this one over to Matt initially because it's more of a strategic question that does relate to quality score. How can a B2B company effectively use ad extensions? So we talked about how ad extensions can indirectly affect quality score by increasing click-through rate. Do you have any specific tips for how a B2B company can make the best of using an ad extension?
It is really tricky, right? When you look across the different types of ad extensions that are offered, you just kind of have to align it with your business. And in some cases, the B2B versus B2C is somewhat negligible. If I know a lot of B2B companies are interested in generating phone calls for their sales team because it's a complicated sale. It's not something that's just going to happen over the website or through a short form. So things like call extensions can still be really effective if you're staffed to kind of answer those calls. It's so specific to the business, it's hard for me to offer a exact best practice. I mean, you could be B2B that could benefit from a location extension. You could be B2B and sell, photocopiers to businesses where you still want to utilize a product extension. There's lots of ways it can still fit. I will say that the application, of some of the ad extensions is sometimes less impactful in B2B than it would be in B2C.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I think that's a good answer. Samir, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to add on to that, as Matt mentioned, it is dependent on, what specifically you're going for in terms of your call to action. But a good resource to use is a site called Think with Google. It's just www.thinkwithgoogle.com. And they actually have published a B2B study that we did with Forbes Insight, which kind of, they surveyed, thousands of B2B execs on how they use, their search, their mobile video ad extensions, and a lot of great data around, just the core metrics and, around the different ad formats. And this is a great site, not just for B2B companies, but for any company. If you just go to Think with Google and you can type in your industry and see a lot of the surveys and the data that Google uses.
That's very cool.
Yeah, thanks for that resource, Samir. So everyone, we have about 5 minutes. I will take a couple more questions. Again, if we didn't get to your question, please go ahead and reach out directly, and I will make sure that your question gets to the right person. So this is another sort of clarification question. This one's from Chris. It's about bid prices, position, and click-through rate. And Samir, I'd like to send this one to you. He says, isn't quality score adjusted by ad position so that advertisers can't bid their way to a great quality score?
So sorry, just clarify. So bid positions adjusting your quality score?
I'll try to, I think I know what Chris is trying to ask. He says it's about bid prices, position, and click-through rate. He says, isn't quality score adjusted by ad position so that advertisers can't bid their way to a great quality score? But isn't bid price actually one component of quality score so that technically maybe you could actually bid yourself to a great quality score?
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, bid prices are not directly tied into your quality score, but there are some indirect methods that Matt and I had talked about earlier, such as starting out with a higher bid to increase your number of impressions and again that top 3 spot. But you can't bid your way to a higher quality score because it is tied to your ad rank, and you'll be compared to other ads in those same positions. So it wouldn't necessarily, it's not a direct correlation, but there are a number of indirect ways that's going to tie in there.
So let's just do a hypothetical scenario here. I want to get a high ad position because I want to have a better quality score. So I artificially increase my bid price, which brings my ad position up, and then also increases click-through rate because we know that ads in a higher ad position get a better click-through rate. My higher click-through rate improves my quality score, which then allows me to bid less and still get that high ad position. This is what Matt refers to as bid popping.
That's right. So to start high and work your way back kind of strategy, you establish good quality score. Samir, I would ask for earmuffs. I mean, to directly answer Chris's question, I think the reverse is true. I mean, Google is a very profitable company that makes a lot more money when you bid into high positions. And so my non-data-based answer to this is that you can buy your way into a bit higher quality score. You need to have all of your good fundamentals, but Google will let you buy your way into it, and frankly, it is good for Google and big quarterly profits. So I don't mean that disparagingly, but I think there's some truth that you can bid yourself into a higher quality score.
But remember that the whole point of having a high quality score is so that you can have a better ad position while paying less.
Yeah.
So this would be a relatively temporary way to address this. You would bid high for a while until you have a high enough quality score to be able to drop your bid price. And again, this is all hypothetical. I think, Samir, you can take off your earmuffs.
Yeah, sorry, my phone cut off there, so I missed the last.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you didn't hear any of that.
All right, thanks. Okay, we'll take one more question, and then we will end the webinar. And please, everyone, remember you can continue to reach out for us. Give me one more second here to grab my last question, please. This one's actually about Trada. So can you talk a little bit about your minimum budget for Trada? So I can actually answer this one, and Matt, you may feel free to chime in. Trada does work with mid-sized and smaller companies. We have a minimum budget of $3,000 a month in ad spend. We actually take all of our marketplace fees and everything out of that ad spend, so you would really only be spending whatever your budget is, and sometimes we spend up to your budget. The reason we do this is because you have a team of dedicated search professionals working for you. You may have 2, 3, 5 different professionals working for you. The benefit of this is that they have this great diversity of thinking, and collectively they have the time to manage your campaign. But in order to have enough data to make informed decisions about the way that they will run your campaign, because what they are doing is constantly optimizing. They're saying, this ad works better than this ad, these keywords are working great. They need to have enough data to get enough conversions to be able to make smart decisions. And we've found that that sweet spot starts at about $10,000, about $3,000 a month. And our average customers are probably between around 10 and 100K in monthly search spend.
Yeah, I mean, break it down a little more simply. $3,000 monthly budget gives you approximately $100 a day. If you've got 3, 4, 5 search optimizers working on that, it's really a question of how much data can they get to make informed decisions, as Anna mentioned. I want to add or remove keywords. I want to A/B test some ads. All that stuff requires data. And for us to deliver the best experience for our customers, budgets at $3,000 and up really allow us to do that. Much below that, you get into $20 a day, $50 a day. When you're really thinking about it in terms of daily budget, we just learn very slowly, and our belief is that good search is empirical, it's data-driven, and so we really set a bar where we need X amount of data, which translates into budgets for most folks of $3,000 and up.
And additionally, our marketplace is performance-based. Your paid search professionals only get paid when they beat your goals, and we only get paid when we beat your goals. So we want to make sure that we can beat your goals with the amount of spend before we determine to go forward with a partnership. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Samir from Google AdWords, thank you for being with us.
It's been a ton of fun. It's great to have an AdWords expert on the phone.
It really is.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Samir. Thank you. Everyone, again, if you have more questions, please reach out directly. You have a couple more minutes to tweet using the hashtag for a chance to win that $25 Amazon.com gift card.
And I think on this last slide here are everyone's Twitter handles. I think we are all bona fide search nerds, so if you want to keep the questions coming that way directly to myself, Samir, Anna, you're welcome to use Twitter as a medium there as well to keep asking questions and setting yourself up for a good 2013 quality score.
Yes. Everyone, have a great holiday season. Thanks so much. This is the end of the webinar.